The sun hung heavy over the village, a relentless weight pressing down on the cracked earth. Mr. Chirwa stood at the edge of his maize field, his boots crunching against the parched ground. Every stalk was brittle, turned to a ghost of brown, snapping like dry bone under the slightest pressure. He reached down, grabbing a stalk, and pulled. It came away without resistance, roots dead in the dust. Behind him, Tumbakani and Uchizi watched in silence. The air held no moisture, only the thick, stagnant heat of a long-forgotten rain. Mr. Chirwa kicked at the soil, watching a fine cloud of gray powder drift away in the wind. Not a single drop had touched this land in months. He turned to the children, his face set in a hard line. "The fields have failed us," he said, his voice raspy. He reached for a woven basket and a water gourd, slinging them over his shoulder. "The earth has nothing left to give, but the forest still holds life. Grab your gear. We move now, before the heat reaches its peak." They turned their backs on the dying rose, stepping away from the dust and toward the dark, inviting shade of the trees. The transition was instant. One step inside the canopy, and the sun vanished, replaced by a cool, damp silence. Tumbikani reached out, her hand brushing against a thick, mossy vine. Uchizi suddenly stopped, his eyes fixed on the high branches. "Look, Mangoes," he whispered. He didn't wait for a command. He gripped the rough bark of the trunk, his feet finding purchase in the knots of wood, and hauled himself upward. He moved with practiced ease, shaking the heavy boughs until the ripe, orange fruit rained down. Tumbikani caught them, her arms quickly filling, the weight of the harvest grounding her. They moved deeper into the thicket, where the scent of wild fruit grew stronger. Tumbikani spotted dark clusters of masuku hanging low. She reached up, pulling the branches down, her fingers working quickly to strip the fruit into their baskets. By mid-afternoon, they arrived at a grove of ancient baobabs. Mr. Chirwa knelt, gathering the hard-shelled fruit from the dust. He gestured to the surrounding trees as the children crowded around. "This is our pantry and our pharmacy," he said, his voice steady. "If we burn this place for firewood, we starve tomorrow. If we protect it, we survive. We take only what we need and leave the rest to grow." The heavy baskets cut into their shoulders as the trio stepped back into the blinding glare of the village clearing. The forest had been a world of shade and abundance, but here, the heat remained absolute. The village was unnervingly quiet. No children chased dogs through the dust. No smoke rose from the cooking pits. Mr. Chirwa wiped his face, his movements slower now, feeling the sudden shift in atmosphere. Tumbikani and Uchizi adjusted their grip on the woven handles, the ripe fruit inside pressing against the sides of the containers. As they walked toward the center of the path, movement flickered in the doorways. A neighbor leaned against a wall, eyes hollow, tracking the sway of the baskets. Another villager emerged from a nearby hut, standing still, hands gripping the doorframe. The silence was not empty. It was heavy, with the unspoken needs of those who had not eaten in days. Mr. Chirwa stopped. He felt the weight of the harvest in his hands and the focused, desperate stares of the people around him. Every step forward felt deliberate. The choice of what to do next hung in the air, thick and inescapable. He looked at the children, then back at the gathered villagers, waiting to see who would break the tension first. Tumbikani broke the silence. She walked directly to the widow's house at the edge of the path. With a steady hand, she tipped her basket, pouring half the mangoes into the woman's lap. The widow stared at the fruit, then looked up at the girl. Uchizi followed, his pace quickening as he reached the elderly neighbors who had not eaten in days. He distributed the masao, his hands working with rapid efficiency. The village square, previously paralyzed by hunger, began to buzz. A man stood up from his doorstep, watching the fruit roll into the dust. A woman climbed down from her porch. The sight of the food triggered a sudden, urgent momentum. Villagers who had been hollow-eyed moments before were now calling out to one another. They formed small groups, gathering ropes and empty sacks from the backs of their huts. The heavy, stagnant atmosphere cracked wide open. Mr. Chirwa watched as the people organized, their movements purposeful and quick. They were no longer waiting for the rain or for help. They were moving toward the forest. Hope had become a physical force. Within minutes, the square emptied as the villagers marched toward the tree line, ready to gather the bounty for themselves. Weeks later, the hunger had retreated. The chief stood beneath the village's oldest tree, his hand resting on the shoulder of Mr. Chirwa. He gestured to the surrounding huts where the brown, cracked earth was being replaced by green life. They taught us that the forest is a bank that never closes, the chief announced to the gathered crowd. But only if we treat it with respect. The villagers responded with the steady rhythm of shovels striking the dirt. They were no longer just gathering, they were planting. Every household had dug holes for new saplings, encircling their homes with the promise of future harvests. Tumbikani and Uchizi spent their afternoons moving from shoot to shoot, pouring precious water into the soil. They worked with a focused, quiet intensity, ensuring each root took hold. The drought still lingered, but the village had changed its relationship to the land. They were no longer victims of the heat, but guardians of the growth. As the sun set, the young trees cast long shadows across the square, a permanent foundation of resilience. The forest would always be there, and now, the village would be there to protect it in return.